Trigonometry can also be used to find unknown angles in a triangle. If we know the sides of a right triangle, it is easy to find any trigonometric ratio, but then we'll need some way to take that ratio and get the angle back. And the tool that we need is known as the inverse trig function. So for each trig ratio, there is a corresponding inverse trig function. Okay, so we'll consider the acute angle theta in a right triangle. You remember this corresponds in our standard diagram to the measure of angle A. Then the inverse trig functions are defined in the following way. Okay, so first of all, the inverse sine. If we have sine of theta equals x, then theta is the inverse sine of x. Okay, so notice this notation here. Sine and then minus 1 here. This is read as inverse sine. Okay, so similar thing going on if we have the cosine. Cosine of theta is x, then theta is the inverse cosine of x. And similarly for the tangent. If tangent of theta is equal to x, then theta is the inverse tangent of x. Okay, so let's do an example. We have the cosine of theta is equal to 1/2. We have to find angle theta. Okay, so on your calculator, on any scientific calculator, and your calculator in particular, you should see above sine, cosine, and tangent your inverse trig functions as second or yellow functions on my calculator. So I have inverse sine, inverse cosine, and inverse tangent, which means I can access the inverse trig functions by simply pressing shift on my calculator and then the corresponding trig function button. So for this example, I'm given that the cosine of theta is equal to 1/2, and I want to find theta. That means that I need to use the inverse cosine, don't I? Okay, so let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to go shift, cosine, that gives me the inverse cosine of the number I'm going to put in, which is 1/2. 1/2. Press equals, the answer is 60 degrees. Let's do a few more examples. And once again, please be sure when you work these examples that your calculator is in degree mode. Okay, we have the sine of theta is equal to 3/5. Find theta. Okay, this time we're going to need the inverse sine. So on my calculator, press shift and then sine. That gives me the inverse sine. And then 3/5, so 3 divided by 5. Get the answer, which is 36.87 degrees approximately. Okay, next example, we have tangent of theta is 5/12. Find theta. Okay, this time we're going to need inverse tangent, don't we? Inverse tangent, 5 divided by 12. The answer is about 22.6 degrees. One more example. Cosine of theta is 2/3. Find theta. So I'm going to need inverse cosine, of course. And then 2/3. And the answer is about 48.2 degrees.